Hello from the brutal capitalist dictatorship of Kuala Lumpur. I hope you're having an amazing day, because if you're having an amazing day, we are having an amazing day. And if we're having an amazing day, you should also be having an amazing day. Today I'm with my good friend Ken from the United States, but he won't be an American citizen for very long. Ken, you've been in Malaysia for 2 weeks, haven't you?
Yeah.
Would you care to share your experience with us?
So I came here to visit Comrade Chris, and I was able to come and explore the country, and it's a very beautiful country, very green. Food is delicious, the people are very nice. I haven't had any problems here. I have no complaints. It's one of the most beautiful countries in all the 10 countries that I visited. So I think if you have the time and to spare, you should definitely come and visit and take a look and see what Malaysia has to offer you, because there's a lot that Malaysia has that I don't think we have in America that you can enjoy for yourself. And yes, you will learn a lot. There's a lot of history, there's a lot of things you probably don't know exist. Yeah, please come to Malaysia and give it a chance, because it's, in my opinion, one of the beautiful, wonderful country.
You know, a lot of things about Malaysia we do take for granted, like the beautiful people, beautiful culture. When I say beautiful, I'm not talking about physical beauty, but there are many physically beautiful Malaysians. Now, the funny thing, Ken, is that the other day, just a few days ago, my student was telling me that her mother was telling her that there's no hope for Malaysia, there's no future for Malaysia, at least for the Chinese and Indians, and she's hoping that after she goes to Australia, that she just stays there for good and never comes home. Many Malaysians actually do agree that the Chinese and Indians in Malaysia have no future because of the ever-growing polarization between the races and a thing called Ketuanan Melayu, which is Malay supremacy, right? Now, granted, not every Malay is a raging racist. In fact, most Malays are not raging racists, okay? And yet, the fact is that there is still, institutionalized racism against Chinese and Indians. Like, they have a harder time getting scholarships, they have a harder time entering public university. So while we understand that this is the result of the British colonial divide and conquer, and it was meant to, this affirmative action was meant to help the Malays at the time, who were very far behind the Chinese, as a result of being thrust from feudalism to capitalism with all of a sudden. The fact of the matter is that many Chinese and Indians feel very unfairly treated in this country, and they feel that they'll be far better treated in the West. They'll be far more, they'll be treated far better in the West, and that they don't mind experiencing some personal racism in the West, because they say at least the institutions are fair, right? What do you have to say to that, to those who say there's no future for the Chinese or Indians in Malaysia?
Well, first, I disagree, because there are a lot of foreigners who come to Malaysia, and they will personally tell you that Malaysia is also it has a huge potential to be something great. Many foreigners come here and they live better than they do in their Western countries, so it's kind of odd for, to hear this, because there's actually a lot of things that you might not even have when you go to Australia in the first place, or anywhere in the West. The one important thing I need to note is, just because you hear that maybe Australia or America or Canada or wherever in the West, just because someone did very well in that country doesn't mean you automatically will do good in that country, because I can tell you, because I'm from the West, that it's not the case. Most of people who come to the West have a Hollywood idea, a glorified Disney movie idea of what the West is like, what America, Australia is like, and when they come there, it's harsh facts. We have a lot of issues that doesn't exist in Malaysia. We have huge high rate of homelessness. We have lots of gun violence, mass shootings, criminals, police brutality. There's a lot of things that you will have to face. And one of the big things you will face is actual racism. And when I say racism, I'm not talking about, even though there is systematic racism, there's physical racism in terms of, for example, when COVID started, we had a president who said that a particular virus was originated from a particular geographic location, and people of that particular geographic location is associated with it. So when that happened, everybody who was associated with that geographical location have been beaten up, have been shot, have been pushed in front of oncoming traffic, oncoming subways, and they were killed. This is something you don't hear in most places in Asia in general. So the life that you have here can be a whole lot worse if you go to Australia, America, or anywhere in the West, for example. So be careful when someone tells you things like, oh, if you go to Australia or America or wherever, that everything's going to work out and that's it. It's not true. And this goes for everywhere else in the world. What I think you should try, just a suggestion, you don't have to listen to me, you don't have to take anything I say as truth. Maybe you should try some other countries, visit different countries and see what they have to offer, and then if Australia is the one you really think you can be yourself and do well, then okay. But don't jump to the conclusion that Australia is and that's it and nothing else, because it's not going to be what you think. I can guarantee you 100%.
Many migrants actually end up going from the frying pan into the hot wok, don't they? And
Yes.
they only want to tell you about the success stories, or let me just say, the only migrants who speak up about their life experiences there are the ones with the success stories. But I don't know, for every one Malaysian who is a success story in America or Australia, I'm pretty sure there are at least a dozen who are doing worse than they were
Yes.
doing over here, because the private sector doesn't discriminate against Chinese and Indians. And you could argue as well that some people even argue that the private sector actually discriminates towards Chinese people, and we can't really prove that. But the thing is that, as Comrade Ken has said, really be very careful before you consider jumping, because even race-based politics, they do exist in the West.
Yes.
Like my brother did better than his course mates, but it was an Indian migrant who became an Australian who gave him his job. Right? He in the end, it was still a foreigner who gave him a job, not an Australian who gave him his first job. So you just have to be very careful, because you could be jumping from the pan into the wok. Malaysia, ever since the race riots, the tragedy of May 13, 1969, we haven't seen anything similar to it. We haven't seen gangs of Malay youths going around bashing Chinese. We haven't seen gangs of Chinese youths, I'm 33, I'm not a youth, going around bashing Malay elders. No, on a personal basis, Malaysians are actually quite nice to each other. It's just our bourgeoisie and our politicians who try to divide us according to race and religion.
And I can give an example, because I'm from New York City. New York City, there's at least maybe half of the population are immigrants or foreigners, for example.
Yeah.
And when you talk to them, not what the media says, when you talk to them face to face, I always ask them, how is life for you here in New York? Did you achieve your dream? Did you become a rich, famous bourgeois millionaire that the movies like to show you? And they said, no, absolutely not. They said their life was even worse in America than it was when they stayed home. And the reason they can't go back is because if they go back, they will face a lot of shame, because their family might say, what's wrong with you? You could have did good, or their friends or their community. So a lot of them stay in New York and they suffer. They're in a much worse exploited position than they would never have imagined before they came here. They could have went to another country somewhere in Asia, they could have went to another place in South America, or, it doesn't have to be, a Western country. The West doesn't have everything you need. It's just a glorified place that
It
you
puts
see
itself,
in the movies. Yeah.
sorry, Jay,
Yeah, go ahead.
it puts itself on a pedestal, doesn't it?
Yes. Everything you think you need in the West, you can find other places, even better. the West is not the center of the universe. It's not the best place. There's a lot of places that could be better for you than in the West.
I know a lot of people in Hong Kong who swore they would lead a better life in London are now having buyer's remorse, and they're saying, they're actually openly admitting that my life was better in Hong Kong. I just didn't want to be I didn't want to work together with the Chinese, that's all.
Yeah.
So the thing is, sorry,
And then to prove to prove what we're saying, I have a link. I'll put it in the description below of hundreds of people. They're all anonymous, but hundreds of people, hundreds of immigrants who came to America and they actually regretted it, and they will tell you stories of harsh realities of life. Well, in America, for example. I'm sure it's the same in Australia, Canada, because we're all the same Anglo-Saxon country mentality. But we can give you some links and lists of things, of proof, of receipts that life in America or in the West is not all up to be.
Well, Ken, that's very, very enlightening, because most people don't hear it from the horse's mouth from an actual American. They hear it from news sources. Most people.
And also, sorry, I didn't want to. Also, don't think that just because everybody wants to come to Australia or Canada or etc. that the local people are happy.
No.
Many local people are very miserable, and they leave America or they leave Canada, Australia by the thousands for a better life. So their life sucks in the West, and their life is much better in the East, wherever it may be. So sometimes people ask me, or they ask another Western guy, why did you leave? Why did you leave? These are the reasons why they leave, because it doesn't have everything that they need. And places like Malaysia, life is so much more rich and fulfilling and soulful than it ever was back home where they're from.
It's not perfect, but we can make it. We can make it a great society if we work at it. We have so much potential. We are a young society, and we don't have a history of bloodshed like the United States, where Malaysia, as imagined by Tunku Abdul Rahman, as Tunku Abdul Rahman said, I want a country with houses for people instead of military barracks. Clothes instead of uniforms, and what else? Plenty of food instead of weapons. That's what he said, something. So his ideal, even though he was not a socialist, his ideal for Malaysia was good, right? It's a happy society, not necessarily a powerful one. So we haven't achieved that ideal, but it's worth fighting for still, right?
Right.
There are a lot of, we're going to get to the point of self-hating Malaysians, who can't say anything good about Malaysia. You find a lot of them on Malaysia Kini, always comparing to Singapore and saying, why did we get rid of Singapore? Look, we could have been, or Singapore. The best thing that happened in Singapore was being kicked out, because now they're a first world country, we're a backwater dump. And the people with a Malaysian derangement syndrome like James Chin, right, or Azli Rahman, who keep hanging around Malaysian forums even though they're no longer part of the picture. What do you have to say about these guys?
Well,
they moved to the West.
they moved to the West. First thing I need to say is it's not true that they hate Malaysia. They love Malaysia, because if they hated Malaysia, they would leave and stop talking about it. They would have absolute what's the word I'm looking for? Indifference.
Hate is not the opposite of love is not hate. It is indifference.
Right. They would leave to wherever the country that their new home is, and they would just live the life that they worked hard for in the West, whether it's Australia or America or whatever. But they don't do that. They keep talking about Malaysia. Why do you need to keep talking about a place that you left? For example, I left America. You don't hear me talk about it unless somebody asks me about it, because I don't care about it. I'm indifferent. Whatever happens in America, it's business, right? I didn't choose to be born there, but I just happened to be raised and born there. But now I have the decision, I can make life choices, and I left. So that's what I did. But you don't hear me talk about it unless the conversation is directed about America. Yet these people come to these forums Or if they happen to come across a person who happens to be going to Malaysia, the first thing they have to do is, oh, don't go to Malaysia, it's bad, it's this, it's that. Why do you have to do that? If you don't like it, just leave, and that's it. Just renounce that you're Malaysian, don't talk about it, just say you're Australian, you're American, you're whatever, and that's it. Secondly,